Hello, everybody. This is a special edition of the To Hell and Back podcast. Let me introduce it this way. Marcia Linehan for years was concerned that if she wasn't any longer running the show all the time, the show wasn't going to go on. She was worried that there wouldn't be enough momentum in the field to continue to meet her original vision, which was to get them all out of hell, all of the people suffering like she did. And I'd like to say to her right now, we're in very good hands. Momentum has continued. Momentum has speeded up. And right now it's all over the world. A few years ago, in anticipating these moments, a group of people, experts in DBT from various countries, got together and started to create what turned into the World DBT Association. And by now, many iterations later, there are multiple chapters around the world, like a European chapter, a North American chapter, a Southeast Asian chapter, Ibero-America with South America chapter, with Middle East and North Africa chapter. There's all these chapters around the world that are thriving when you see what they're doing. So that brings me to, what is this about? I don't know, some kind of collective genius in this group has now led to the decision to have a World DBT Summit, which is like a first ever thing. Not first ever about everything. It's basically like the equivalent of a 24-hour telethon, but a global telethon that moves around the world as the 24 hours go by. And that's what you're going to hear about today, because the people with me today that I'm basically interviewing, I guess I'm the host for the co-hosts of the World DBT Summit. And so they're going to tell us about that summit, what the point is, how did it come into be, how's it structured, how can you partake in it, what's it going to offer, and so they're going to answer a lot of questions, and then it'll begin in October 28th. So this is my chance. So let me introduce the co-hosts of the World Summit. The first one, Michaela Swales. As a PhD psychologist with a background of first training in DBT over 30 years ago. She has spent many, many happy hours training hundreds of teams and therapists in DBT, adapting more adherent practice. Her main research focus has been the implementation of DBT in routine practice. Currently, she is the president of the World DBT Association. Alec Miller is a clinical psychologist as well, who co-developed DBT for adolescents over 30 years ago. He is passionate about disseminating DBT for adolescents worldwide in both clinical and school settings. He's also the co-director of Cognitive and Behavioral Consultants, which is a group practice treatment and training center in New York. So I want to welcome both of you. This is a really, it's fun these are people that I've worked with and known for, God knows, 25, 30 years in implementing DBT. So it's really exciting to get together and talk and to hear from the two of you about what this, crazy event is.
Thanks for the invitation, Charlie. It's great to be with you and to have the opportunity to talk about it.
You're welcome.
Same here. Great to be here with both of you.
All right, very good. So I want to start with you, Michaela. I'm gonna set this off with questions, and then we're gonna see where that goes.
Yeah.
So first of all, Michaela, as the president of the World DBT Association, you're probably the best person to ask right now, what is that? What's
Yeah,
the
no,
World
right.
DBT Association?
What is it? Yeah.
Right.
And I think I really liked your introduction, Charlie, because you really kind of set the stage for it, really, is that it was originally a group of people who got together to think about, when you've got a treatment developer who's as powerful and passionate as Marsha, she held together many strings. She was a pioneer in research. She also was powerful in moving training forward and in the dissemination effort. But when someone retires of that stature, you have to think as a community, how might you keep that energy and keep those things moving forward? Um, and so that was the idea behind the World DBT Association. And so in a way, it kind of reflects two things. It's got a strong emphasis on community, which is connecting people who do DBT from across the globe, from wherever they are. And part of that is also a dissemination effort, because there are many people around the world who would benefit from DBT who maybe don't have access to the sorts of resources that some of us in some countries may have. So there's a strong sort of community element in that sense of disseminating the treatment. But I think there are also there are kind of committees and groups who take a particular focus on things that remain important. So, for example, thinking strategically about the research in DBT, what are the next key things that we need to be looking at? How might we drive that agenda forward? Then also, how might we synthesize the work of the research that's being done, and what implications does that have for services, for training, and for implementation? And so we have a committee that looks at training and implementation and standards and guidelines that then can be taken by the component chapters around the world to implement in their own regions. And then we also have a group of people who kind of take care of the legacy, I might say, who look at the fidelity and of the treatment, like what is DBT and what is its essence. And of course, there's a lovely dialectical tension as the research agenda develops and move forward. How do we see and recognize something as DBT and honor that, and at the same time keep the principles of the treatment? And so the organization itself has parts which relate to these committees who look after those functions. Then it has these chapters, as you mentioned, which address the community side of things. And so together it's a kind of a dynamic organization where the committees think about these big picture issues, but then they connect with those chapters to think about getting those messages out across the DBT community.
But Michaela, given all of that, and given our understanding of how that came into being, what makes this the right moment to have a World DBT Summit? Before we even get into exactly what that is, but why?
No, exactly. Why now?
Yeah, what's this global thing? I mean,
Well, I think the thing is, when I took over as president about 18 months ago, I think, this was a new organization. And I think, it was quite clear maybe what the regional chapters had to do, which was connecting people in their region and helping them develop. But it wasn't so clear what's the role of the World DBT Summit. And of course, there was a lot of excellent work going on in the World Organization around the research, around the treatment and fidelity, dissemination and training and implementation. But people didn't really know about it, and even now people don't even know what the World DBT Organization is. And so I suppose it came out of that idea of wanting to let people know about this work so that they could use it to affect their practice. And as a method, really, of kind of communicating more effectively with people. And so, in some ways, I don't know if it is the right time. It just is the time. And, it felt like we needed to do something that would communicate this work and connect people across the globe. And so then there are just practicalities that you have to think about in terms of why now, which is to look at, some of the regional chapters were offering a congress at a particular time. There are other big events happening in the DBT world. And so then it's kind of finding a slot, a space where the community could come together. And so there's a mixture of the kind of like, we need to do something to, bring this work to the world. And then the practicalities of finding a space.
Michaela, so one would think if you're going to have a big gathering and people are going to learn something, you might call it a conference, you might call it a
Sure.
congress, you might
Yeah.
call it a telethon. I mean, there's lots of things. Why did it get called a summit?
Yeah, well, I think the thing is, it's definitely not a congress because at a congress, you invite people to submit their work and their research work. Yeah. And those are great events. And often the people that are attracted there are researchers and sometimes clinicians, but it's difficult for clinicians to get access sometimes to those events. So it's definitely not a congress. Yeah. It's not a training event either, because a training event requires you to, teach topics in a more consistent way and to evaluate people's performance and get them to kind of report back on their work. So it's more, in some ways, it's a dissemination event to share lots of different and some new aspects of DBT that then people can then go on and explore further afterwards. Um, and I suppose I chose the word, so I wanted a word that kind of signaled that people would kind of say the question, essentially what you're saying, like, well, what is that? To signal that it was something different. And I guess we hear a lot about, we see big climate. I guess we had one of the big climate summits near us. And so, kind of seeing lots of people coming together from across the globe on a major issue, that kind of, I guess that was why I thought of the word summit, even though I have to say that my first thought before I came up with summit was a DBT-a-thon. Like it was a telethon was the thing that inspired me, to be honest.
I want to say I think summit is brilliant. I mean, when I first heard this in one of our various meetings some time ago, and I think you articulated it. I don't know where it all came from. All of these things come from everywhere, of course. But I mean, I thought, wow, this is brilliant. And it's partly brilliant because we don't know what it is.
Yeah. Although I think that might be why we might have a slight marketing issue, as people are thinking, what is that thing?
What is it? I remember when I developed with Marcia a long time ago on an inpatient program, the egregious behavior protocol. The brilliance of the word egregious was that everyone knew it was bad, but no one knew what it was. It made it very, very universal. So anyway, let me turn to you, Alec, and ask you, why did you join in this thing? I mean, what's going on with you?
Are you checking on my mental status?
Yeah, I don't know. You can take it wherever you want, but
well, yeah. Well, first of all, Michaela is a dear friend and colleague, and so she does so much for the field of DBT, as we just highlighted. She's the proud, capable WDBTA president. So when she asks for something from me, of course, I'm going to say yes. But really, it's truly an honor to support the World DBT Association in this very unique way. I mean, as we just said, nothing has ever been done like this in the field that I'm aware of either. And Marcia was, I guess, all of our remarkable mentors. And so contributing in this way to helping her carry out her mission, her vision, as you said, Charlie, disseminating DBT worldwide. I mean, just making DBT treatment and training accessible to all. I mean, this summit, I mean, delivering it virtually, I think, is also so brilliant. Helps to move the needle further in that direction.
So what people or what groups of people are right for attending the summit?
I mean, it really is for everyone, from the seasoned folks to the junior folks, to researchers, to consumers. We really have something, I think, for everyone. So first of all, from the trainees' perspective, I mean, they're going to be loving life at this event, right? There's so much to take in for our new folks, so much to learn. There's going to be mindfulness practice sessions along with social networking opportunities. They're going to really have trouble deciding what to attend given the range of offerings, and they're going to have difficulty, I think, signing off to rest during the 24-hour window, because it's going to be it's like a buffet opportunity here.
Yeah. It is. It's like tapas. It's like DBT tapas is what it is.
DBT tapas. I like that. And then the researchers are going to get their fill, because there's going to be expert researchers from around the world. And clinicians can dig in on their choice of clinical workshops ranging from autism to family therapy, to adherence in DBT, substance misuse, etc. So there's so much to choose from, even on the research standpoint and the clinical standpoint. And then consumers and family members also are going to hopefully find this summit a real nice place to learn, to feel supported by fellow consumers, family members, and clinicians. So, by the way, there may be, I'm just teasing something, there may be a celebrity or something that could drop in, who knows, that might share something about their journey. I'm just saying, tune in and you might find something. We'll see.
Hey, Alec, could you say something when people have gone through this, once they get some sleep afterwards? I mean, what are you hoping they feel coming out of this?
Well, I am hoping and I'm praying that people are going to feel inspired, invigorated. I think they're going to feel more confident. They're going to hopefully feel a reduction in their burnout. And given that loneliness is such a rampant worldwide problem these days, I think we're hoping that the summit will enhance a feeling of connectivity amongst individuals and communities on a larger scale. Because as we know, DBT is a community of clinicians serving a community of clients. So with WDBTA, we are the world DBT community. It's kind of a mind-blowing construct when you think about it.
Yeah, it is. It
And I
is.
think there are so many clinicians and programs who are practicing in quite isolated ways just because of the nature of their work, that it's a real opportunity for them to feel part of something bigger and to feel connected as
In
part
my,
of that.
and as somebody who is focusing a bit in my life right now on dialectics in particular, I just want to say, it just occurred to me that this is a very dialectical event
It is.
in that the principles behind dialectics include flow, where
Mm.
just kind of improvisation and flow, and also include connection and interconnection between different systems and different people. This is like a massive dialectical event
Yeah.
That's
from
right.
my
No,
point of
it
view.
is, and also just trying to, how people will experience it, and even getting it so that people can connect from different parts of the world, raises all sorts of dialectical challenges. But yeah, no, definitely that sense of kind of connectedness, and we certainly hope, Alec and I are really hoping that we'll get a flow, even though we're sure at times we might be feeling quite tired.
So, Michaela, could you get into orienting all of us about what the structure is going to look like?
Sure.
How is this set up? What do we
Yeah,
expect?
sure. So the first thing is, and I mean, is to say that obviously it's an online event, and the reason for that is that if you want to connect people across the globe, if you have it, I mean, I know there's an issue. Not everyone has internet. That's an issue. So we can't necessarily reach everyone. But if we were to have it in a particular location at a particular time, there will be many people who couldn't come because of the expense. So this is really the driver around having it an online event. And then, of course, when you start to think about doing that, if you're going to reach the globe, of course, you have to go across the time zones. And so that's why we're kind of doing this 24-hour thing, so that wherever you are, wherever you are, you will at least be able to access, 12 hours or 16 hours when you're awake. And then there'll be 8 hours when you're asleep. But you can access that afterwards online. And some people we know are willing to sort of try and see if they can go the whole distance.
Yeah,
So
I've heard that you plan to try to do that.
we are definitely going the whole distance. Although you'll notice there that Alec's got a wonderful couch right there. He's already set up for the quick nap between times. And so then we had to think, okay, well, how are we going to, essentially, it's, the first thought we had was it was kind of like 3 days of content, like 3 8-hour days. But what we've gone for in the end is, in essence, 6 4-hour blocks. And in each block, and the reason we said 4-hour blocks is we were thinking about the busy clinician, or the clinician who perhaps can't take much time out of their work without losing pay, that maybe 4 hours might be all that they could take at only one go, and it would be nice if they had like a coherent experience. So in those 4-hour block, you would get a mindfulness mindfulness experience. You get a high profile research talk. You get something we're calling a deep dive, which maybe we'll kind of come back to. You get something from a family or service user perspective. You get a very brief just update on relevant information from one of the committees about that, like about that. For example, I chair the training and implementation committee. We're going to be launching some DBT implementation guidance. And then you would get a choice of a minimum of 4, sometimes 5, 90-minute workshops that you could select one of in your 4-hour window. And in essence, that structure repeats 6 times.
With get different content each time?
Different content each time. So all the way through, it changes completely. But for example, like when it's the middle of the night in the UK, we'll be having clinicians and researchers from the Asia Pacific region who will be presenting their work and talking about, say, working with families in that region. We'll also be having some panels which look cross-culturally at mindfulness, these sorts of things. So there's a sort of 24-hour rolling stream. Each 4-hour window replicates in structure, but the content is different each time. And then you have these, over the 6 segments, you end up with a choice of like 24 plus workshops. And then the other thing that just finishes off those 4-hour windows is something called a networking space. And so we're reaching out to different communities, different DBT associations who are going to host those networking spaces. So you can maybe, make yourself a coffee or eat your salad or whatever it is, have a snack and learn about, DBT in Finland or DBT in Malaysia or DBT in Chile, and just meet some of the clinicians and researchers and service users from those parts of the world.
I don't understand. Michaela, is that going on simultaneously with the other things, or that's a separate event?
That's a separate thing. That happens in your 4-hour window. After your workshop, there's like a networking space where you can just, it's a less intense space where you can connect with other people and before you head into the next 4-hour slot.
Will those networking events also be recorded and available online?
They will. They will. Yeah.
Alec, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, well, just this idea of these short form learning and connection opportunities, I think what Michaela is highlighting, I think is what's so exciting about it, right? We're not going to have a 3-hour networking thing, 30 minutes for that, 10 minutes for mindfulness, 30 minutes for some of the research presentations, et cetera. So these are kind of short form learning and connection opportunities that is built into every 4-hour block is a really unusual and exciting structure that I think will keep everybody engaged across the world.
So let me, Michaela, one thing that this, I don't need to know the answer to this, but I'm sort of curious. When you talk about this, I sort of picture going around the world, like time zone by time zone, 24 time zones and 24 hours. So is there any correlation between, let's say, a 4-hour block is all going to come from Southeast Asia or something, or not?
Well,
not necessarily.
There are some things in terms of, I did say to speakers, like I'm not, when you're inviting people to take part in an event that's never been done before and they're going, what is that thing? Right. It's not a good sell to say, and would you mind awfully presenting at 3 a.m. in the morning? It's not really a good look. So inevitably, there will be at certain times a greater representation from different parts of the world. But as it happens, the way time zones work, you might have people from, in Ibero-America at the same time as people from North America, Europe and America at times are awake at the same time. Other times Europe and, the Asia-Pacific zone are kind of mapping over. So, but I mean, I think the idea that we had was that we would start at sunrise in New Zealand was what we would start. We'd start at sunrise in New Zealand. So if you're in New Zealand and you're listening to this, it will be starting at 6 a.m. Of course, what I didn't check was that I don't think the sun rises at 6 a.m. in October in New Zealand. So I'm sorry for that. But anyway, the idea is that it rises there and then it moves across the globe. But of course, when it's 6 a.m. in New Zealand on Thursday, the 29th, so that's just this is one of the things that you, just because of what you said, it doesn't all start on the 28th of October, because if you're in New Zealand, it starts at 6 a.m. on the Thursday, the 29th of October.
Right.
But that's the late afternoon European time, and also like a bit earlier in the afternoon, for Alec. So like, and then you go forward for 24 hours from wherever you start, basically. It took me ages to get my head around this whole thing.
I was just going to say, Charlie, Michaela and her team have just done a masterful job putting this together. The logistics on that alone is incredible.
It's incredible. No, nobody, nobody's had to deal with this level of complexity. It's like playing Sudoku with other dimensions.
Well, no, exactly, and it hasn't totally worked. I had a presenter, did it in such a lovely way, just to say, wasn't my intention that they had to speak at 2 a.m. in the morning. I said, no, that's an error.
So, Alec, could you now, let me ask you, I mean, how do you think this will work to keep people energized and connected and sort of focused during this event that goes all the way around the world, different time zones? What's going to keep people up?
Well, I mean, again, I think as Michaela just highlighted, that 4-hour chunks where you get a piece of all the different aspects of this conference in a 4-hour window, you cannot lose, right? There's just opportunities to get a piece of all of those things in your time zone. That is just going to be, and with just, a bench of experts teaching you and engaging you. So I think it's going to, there's no room for boredom here. I think the format and the breadth and depth of presentations are going to be very engaging. I just feel badly that we couldn't get everyone who's capable of contributing to this into this first summit, but I'm sure we'll continue to invite more fabulous presenters at the second annual summit.
So for this one,
biannual,
or biannual, yeah, okay, Michaela, fair point.
Be realistic. So for this summit, what were you looking for in inviting presenters and interviewers and so on?
Well, again, Michaela's strategic vision, I think, was to have a diverse representation from all parts of the world. And as we're talking about, their senior folks balanced with some more junior ones. We have presenters from Asia, the Middle East, Europe, North America, South America, and as we just heard, even some folks from down under New Zealand. I'm really, frankly, in awe of this worldwide representation in one summit. I've never seen anything quite like it. But I also know I'm really excited about doing some of these deep dive interviews with several brilliant, talented, fascinating people who have dramatically impacted our field. So, for example, Pablo Gagliese, an Argentine psychiatrist, has devoted the past 15 years of his life spreading DBT across Latin America, which, again, how does one wake up one day and not only want to engage in such an ambitious task, but then have the capacity and resources to actually do it? And he has done it in incredible fashion. So we'll talk with him. And then there's my old friend, Tony DuBose, that you both know, and who's an American psychologist who's also fascinating and quite entertaining character, who's devoted his career to training and disseminating DBT worldwide. Actually, so many countries I've lost count. But he's acquired so much wisdom and in terms of what does and doesn't work when you embark on training, implementation, and dissemination at that scale. And the third one that I'm doing a deep dive with is Lars Mellem, who's a Norwegian psychiatrist. He's also a professor and director of the National Center for Suicide Research and Prevention. And he's changed the field of adolescent DBT. He served as the principal investigator of the first adolescent DBT trial, published, I can't believe it, 2014. And I had the pleasure of, serving with him as a co-investigator and training and supervising his team. But what I'm excited about is I can't wait to talk to him about the fact that he just published a 12-year follow-up of the study that he did with those original participants who are now in their 30s. And we don't have anybody doing those sorts of follow-up studies in DBT, 10, 12 years. So what an incredible testament to his commitment, his resilience for his team to be able to do that kind of long-term research. And so then Michaela's going to do several deep dive interviews of her own with 3 other luminaries that she can speak about.
Yeah. No, I think that's one of the things that's really exciting. I suppose what I was thinking here was about what are some really key important aspects central to the treatment? And, so I'm going to deep dive with Melanie Harned into exposure. This is a central element of this treatment. And of course, has gone on to be the bedrock of kind of what we might think of as the second generation DBT treatments, which really integrate exposure for trauma into them. And so I'm really looking forward to that, and also to talk with Martin Bohus about Wise Mind and Shan Ling Kang about dissemination in the Asia Pacific region. And so I think in terms of selecting people, it was partly thinking about what are the kind of central key pillars of the treatment that we might deep dive into. But then also we asked people who are on the committees and in the chapters to say, well, what would you like to see here? Who is good? Like, who have you heard who has got something important to say, and to try and bring those voices together. And the other thing I'm really excited about is actually this idea of new voices in DBT. So we've got a number of people who are kind of earlier in their journeys and doing really important research or clinical applications. And so I'm looking forward to showcasing their work a little bit and hearing more from them.
Alec, I understand you and Jill Rathis will be doing a clinical workshop. Can you say a little about what the focus is going to be?
Well, since you, Charlie, actually encouraged us to pursue DBT with adolescents about 31 years ago, to be exact, Jill and I are continuing to learn and refine our work with teens and families. So the focus of this workshop is to do family work with adolescents and their caregivers. And when we first started, as you may remember, we considered family therapy optional, as needed, but we didn't emphasize and recognize even the critical importance of the impact of DBT family work. So, Alan Frusetti, of course, has influenced a lot of our thinking about that kind of work. And so the workshop's going to be providing more specific DBTA family therapy guidelines. And then we're going to show some video demonstrations of several of these strategies delivered with teens and their families in challenging scenarios. So I'm hoping it's going to be a fun workshop for those who are interested in doing more family work.
So Michaela, we're sort of covering some different territories of different things that'll happen, but are there any things before we go further that you would want to highlight that are also going to be focused on, or speakers, or maybe any consumers or family members?
Yeah.
What
I mean,
else is going on?
there are so many things that I'm kind of excited by. It seems wrong to kind of highlight some over others, and at the same time, I'm going to do just that. So one segment that I'm putting together, which I'm very excited about, is that I have been fortunate enough to connect with three remarkable women who were previously service users and received DBT, but who are all now qualified as therapists and delivering DBT. And of course, this, is exactly what Marsha did in a way. She was the first to kind of plow that path. And so I'm looking forward to chairing that panel to hear from these three remarkable women, and also some of the challenges, some of the stigma that they still experience being in that space. And so I'm really looking forward to that. We were also just working earlier this afternoon on a very interesting panel stroke workshop, which will be looking at family work across cultures. And we've been managed to connect a number of people from all different parts of the globe to work together and presenting a seminar. Now, how we're going to manage that on the time zones, we're going to have to be creative there, I think. But I'm particularly looking forward to those. And then the other thing is there's a short session as part of a research workshop, which is going to be about sleep in people who get the BPD diagnostic label. I think this is something that's often underattended to in therapy, and I think that's going to be a real little gem for therapists to really think about what they might do. So, yeah. But there's so many other things I could mention, but those are just a few of the things I'm looking forward to.
And I know you like Tony Dubose was described, but you also have done a lot of work across different countries, different cultures, different contexts. Could you say a little about about how this is going to speak to that because, I mean, I've done a fair amount of work with different countries as well, and it's so different. The conditions, the healthcare
Vastly different,
system.
yeah, totally
So
different.
how is this
And
going to adapt to that?
yeah, and I think this is one of the things we really want to showcase throughout. And I think if you're able to access the smorgasbord or the tapas elements, you really get a sense of that. For a start, in the networking spaces, there will be you can drop in and discover like what is it like doing DBT in Malaysia or in Korea or in Chile or wherever, and hear about those different contexts and different healthcare systems and how people have gone about tackling the issue of bringing DBT into those systems. I think also we've got a range of speakers. We asked the chapters, as I've mentioned before, we asked the chapters to nominate people from their regions who, have got who've got important things to say, either based on their research or on their implementation work. And so I think throughout you will hear things about how people have tackled those challenging issues. What is it like to do mindfulness in a culture that's primarily Islamic? What do you do about that? Um, how do you work with families in cultures where it's actually legal to beat your wife and abuse your children? Like, what does DBT have to say in those contexts? So I think there'll be lots of different places throughout the summer where you will hear about these different ways in which DBT is being brought in, and I'm hoping that will give us all an opportunity to reflect on our own practice and to think about, because sometimes we all can kind of get into ways of doing things because we've always done them that way. And so I think this is an interesting opportunity to hear, hold the fidelity piece, and also to hear about how creatively other people have solved those problems in a context of trying to be committed to the fidelity of the treatment.
Kayla, what's the thinking about is this going to be conducted mainly in English or is it going to be in different
Yeah.
languages or how is this going to work language wise?
Yeah, no, I know. And this is one of the things that I think we're still grappling with a little bit. That we initially our idea was to see if we could actually kind of recruit and get translators to, so we could have translation channels in some of the major languages. That proves quite difficult for an event of this size and scale, and given its 24-hour nature. And in consulting with the chapters and the regions where there are where there would be legitimate linguistic concerns about accessing something in English. Currently, most chapters have been happy with the idea that you will be able to get subtitles, subtitle translations. And I think for some of the main speaker events, there may well be some simultaneous translation. But certainly afterwards, there will be, that chapters will be doing some work to make sure that it's much more available in people's original language. I think, that was originally when I set off. I thought, right, we're going to do this for 24 hours and we're going to use, we're going to have five of the five main languages that are used, on the WHO, and that just was a logistical step too far. And so we're going to do what we can to try and make it as accessible as possible. And, there will be some limitations there. Yeah.
Alec, I know that you've been very focused on the mental health crisis among teens in our culture and in the world. I wonder if you could say something about what you would hope that this summit how it's going to address what's really a global mental health crisis. By all statistics and by all cultures, it seems that there's a mental health crisis in the world today. And how will this segue with that?
It's a good question, Charlie. I mean, this is the first of its kind, this summit, so I can't speak with too much certainty about impact, but and certainly as someone, as you say, who's done a lot of training of folks around the world for a long time, and as someone who's been to many conferences, even though this is not a conference, I do think this may be the start of something special that may have some impact. And, when you think about it, to be able to share knowledge and unite DBT professionals and consumers and students from around the world and hopefully contribute to reducing the mental health crisis by, strengthening our connections as human beings from all walks of life, to increasing access, as you said, to underserved communities for both professionals and consumers, and hopefully helping diverse audiences better understand, better validate, feel greater empathy for one another, and maybe even become less polarized, even amongst ourselves as clinicians.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking between validation, dialectical thinking and acting, behavior change, that's what the world needs more of in this moment. So I'm kind of excited that we might do it right and push those principles and strategies further along around the world. So I'd like to think we can have some impact.
And what do you think, Alec, about having if I write a song about called "What the World Needs Now" is DBT?
What the world needs now is
It's
DBT.
DBT.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
it.
All right.
I'm
All
in on
right.
that one.
All
Yeah.
right. All right. And so I'm imagining that there might be people that might hear this intro to this whole summit and be on the fence about whether they want to go. What do you want to? I mean, not that you want to drag anyone to it. I mean, this is a voluntary event, but what would you suggest to people to think about who are on the fence about whether to devote their time to this?
Yeah, I really do think, as we've highlighted today, it's a one of a kind opportunity. And I've told my staff, my trainees, and frankly, anyone who will listen, this is a must see and must do. And even if someone can only attend, as we said, for 4 hours or 8 hours, it's worth it. You can drop in for a research presentation, take a break, do a clinical workshop, take a nap, join a networking meeting, go eat. Got to be mindful of your police skills, of course. At least some of us can try. But my point is, there's definitely ways of doing it in a humane way, and I think it's a reasonably affordable event where you can get 24 hours of content. So I'm hoping people would really jump in.
That's true. That's true. All right, Michaela, just we're heading towards the end of this conversation, but
Yeah.
I wonder if you can sort of comment if there's things that you haven't said so far about what you're hoping that this is going to spark in people, whether it's in clinicians, whether it's training, whether it's research, whether it's consumers and families.
Well, I think it's really, I think I probably have said it. It's really about this whole being kind of connected to each other and feeling that like we are part of a global community, and also that we can see the principles of DBT that are alive and well across that community, and also see the creativity and the adaptability and flexibility that people have brought to that. Um, and I think also an opportunity to recognize the importance of diversity and difference and to respect that and to be curious about it. I think that would be, yeah, that's what I really hope. And I mean, and I also hope that, we're asking people to, sink some of their hard-earned money into an event. So I hope they really get something that nourishes them and that they can really utilize. And I think I just wanted to say something about the charging for it is that, we have made a decision. So there's a kind of a student trainee rate, which is the equivalent of $50. Wherever you are in the world, it'll correct your currency. There's a sort of $75 rate for people in low and middle income countries and a $150 rate for those in higher income countries. But what we've said very clearly and what I wanted people to really hear is that those bandings don't respect the differences that people experience within those different countries. So we just want people to select and pay for the ticket, which reflects what they can manage. Okay. Those are guide prices, we might say. So I really did just want to say that it's more important to me that people come and pay which of the tickets that they can afford. And I hope that they get something that nourishes them and helps them in their DBT journey, whether that's as a researcher, as a consumer, a family member, or a clinician.
I've seen people online, Michaela, asking whether there's any CE credits for this kind of thing, continuing
Yeah.
education credits. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't, it's something we're considering. I think it would be hard for us to apply for the CE credits in all of the different countries of the globe. But if people, wanted to partner with us, and do some of that work for us, we'd definitely be open to that. I think we certainly will be able to provide some kind of, confirmation that you were there, if that's enough. But because I recognize this is very important for some folk, and it's just very difficult to coordinate across multiple, requirements in different countries. Yeah.
Michaela, this is kind of a big picture question, but
Yes.
you've been so focused on this World DBT Association and now the summit. So you've thought probably beyond most of us. I mean, the leader of an organization you hope is having a 5-year plan, not a 1-month plan. So do
Yeah,
you
you're
have
right.
do you sort of have an idea? And if you don't, that's fine. But of what you hope would happen over the next 5 years in the
Yeah.
DBT?
Yeah. Do you mean in DBT as a whole or in the World DBT Association?
Well, really both. I was thinking
Well,
DBT around. I mean, this is a world
yeah,
event,
it's
and
a world event. Yeah. And so I think, in terms of the organization, what we're hoping as a result of this, there will be some income from it, and that will enable us to support things which are very important to us. So, for example, um, we have strategic planning meetings around research, and it will be really important to be able to support people from countries that traditionally can't access that to be able to come. So we'll be able to financially support people to access those things to contribute to the research agenda. And so that we can really think more about research access dissemination into those parts of the world that are underserved. So I think there's a part of the work which is about being able to bring what we do in the World Organization more actually to making a difference on the ground. And so I think there are some things there that we could do around research that could be really helpful. I think there's a piece of work. I mean, again, I don't want to kind of give any spoilers, but there's going to be some interesting research presented at the summit, which I think is going to change maybe how we have to think about training DBT and implementing DBT, and actually what does DBT, like when we think of DBT, what are its essential elements? And so I think there's going to be some very interesting work to do between the research committee and the treatment integrity committee, thinking about that, and then with the training and implementation committee about how to take that forward across the globe. So, but I think what I really hope for is just an increased sense of connectedness as part of a community, and so that then people feel that there are people they can go to, think events they can attend where they can take their own journey forward.
Yeah, I just want to reflect on the language that both of you are using throughout describing this. It keeps occurring to me that so much of it is the same kind of language you would use to talk about a good consultation team in DBT. The support, the connection, the helping people get through crises.
Yeah.
I mean, and in some ways that it's to globalize the idea of
Yeah.
a consultation team is another way to think of this, is that to
Yeah.
start to feel like you are part of a worldwide thing
Mm.
that's
Yeah.
going on, where you have friends in other countries, you have friends all over the place that are trying to do these things, and and that those people who are listening who might know what the consultation team agreements are in DBT, that these agreements would apply, these 6
Oh,
agreements
totally.
to
Absolutely.
the entire project. It's sort of like a consultation team expanded beyond what we ever imagined, and until we
Yeah.
include Mars and the moon,
Yeah, no, right.
it's sort of the biggest
Yeah.
problem. So,
No, I think that's certainly true, and that's one of the things that excites me about it, because I know that people coming will come with that kind of spirit in mind, and
yeah,
also particularly thinking about the kind of the 7th consultation team agreement, about thinking about, and I think that's one of the things that's exciting about this. I think DBT, you know, it has its origins in a white kind of Western kind of perspective. And one of the things here is just being extremely aware of that, and then being open to hear about how people have really taken this and thought about it, and the differences, you know, when you're working with families in collectivist cultures, for example. So what does this mean for consultation team? We're going to have we've got a session on consultation team, actually, looking at some of these things. So yeah, very exciting.
So I have a final question for each of you. How are you going to stay awake? I mean, if the two of you are pledging to stay awake, and I see the couch there, yeah, I get that. But I think that are you both actually going to try to stay awake the whole time? And a lot of coffee, is that
yeah, we're gonna, you know, we need to be on, obviously, and adrenaline, I think, is going to help us carry it some of the way.
I think adrenaline will, yes.
I think that'll go some of the way, Michaela. And then I think my workshop will keep my adrenaline going. And then I think also being inspired by other people, and seeing some old faces and some new ones, I think will help keep my ears and eyes open. And then I think when all else fails, as Charlie said, I will rely on my IV caffeine drip to be in full force.
I don't drink caffeine, so I can't use that at all. But I agree with Alec. I think it's going to begin with, you know, I'm just going to be extremely like, is it going to work? Like, what happens if, you know, like, you know, we're due to be doing, you know, a deep dive with Pablo Gallesi, and there's a power cut and we can't do that. Like, you know, I'm just going to be like that to begin with. But then I think the diversity and the difference and the sort of change up of different things, I think, will really help. And then the other thing I'm going to do in true telethon style, with the help of my lovely daughter, is I'm going to change my outfits. I've decided I'm going to have a different outfit for each segment.
You didn't tell me that. All right.
So
okay.
I'm just going to, you know, like, so then like I can then kind of think, okay, this is like a new thing. I've just got 4 hours to do in this thing. And I thought this might kind of help me.
Ooh, that's a brilliant idea. I think I'm going to
change your shirt.
I'm going to change my outfit too. Yes.
Yeah.
all right? Yeah. All right.
Charlie, don't get any wrong ideas about you changing outfits. Okay?
No, I know you were traumatized once by that, and so I'll try to spare you. All right, guys. This is an incredible thing. I really appreciate you coming on and just talking about it, and this will get disseminated as far as we can, so people get a chance to get these pictures, and it may lead to some other questions, but you know, we'll
and that's fine. We have a summit email. We can make sure that, but the link to register and also the summit email is there so that people can get in touch.
Charlie, thank you so much for hosting us today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, sure. It's a pleasure. All right, guys. So let's call it a wrap here. That's all right.